How's everybody doing tonight? You know, I don't really get nervous on stage anymore, but I've never spoken into a microphone like this. And I had to ask the production team, I was like, where do I need to get on this thing so you guys can hear me okay? Nice. All right. My name is Travis Lewis. I'm the Education and Community Engagement Manager at Jazz St. Louis. And again, it's such a pleasure to see such a full house tonight for such a cool group. I just wanted to take a couple minutes to thank our summer series. So this is our Summer Spotlight series. We focus St. Louis-based artists, both big and small. And if you don't know the group that's up on stage, you will get to know them very great. I'm very happy and honored that they're a part of the St. Louis community, and it's very special that we get to get them. And I just want to take a quick note that Mr. TJ Muller has an email list up at the front door, so when you're leaving, like, definitely sign up if you want to learn more about what he does, because this is not your only project, right?
I've got thousands.
Yeah. I also want to take a minute for our summer series, which is entirely free. That is underwritten by the Stewart Family Foundation and Worldwide Technology, so we get a quick round of applause for that. I think if you're able to travel around to other mid-sized cities, you'll find that Jazz St. Louis is very unique and special, and a large part of their support has been a big part of that story. Secondly, you can see the on-air sign back here. We are live streaming. There's some cameras around here, and this will live on the internet. So if you get up early and you leave, we'll know. Make a comment on YouTube about it. With that said, I really am excited you guys get to watch this. If you guys, who here has seen this group before? Oh, you guys are in for a treat. We got period instruments. He told me he left the big one at home, so he's got the small tuba here tonight. And just from having done jazz for as long as I have, like, this group does this style right. They play in that style. They don't get outside of it in a great way, and we're really lucky to have this. A couple other things I want to mention. I talked about period pieces. They do this in classical music too. You might get like a Mozart symphony where they're playing with period instruments. The difference between that and this is the louder you guys cheer and applause when you're happy with stuff, the better the band's gonna play. You don't need to look at each other and go, do I clap now? So without further ado, let's bring the house down. Arcadia Dance.
Thanks, Travis. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here for the second night in a row. Was anyone here last night? Just a few people. They don't usually come back. It's okay. Well, for those of you who haven't come back, we're going to do all new material tonight. We'll keep it fresh. I've got to keep these guys on their toes, otherwise they fall asleep on the bandstand. You know, we're going to play a whole bunch of music from the 1920s and the 1930s, and we're going to throw in a whole load of specifically local St. Louis jazz that was written and recorded right here 100 years ago. In fact, it's the year 2024, and we're going to start by traveling back in time 100 years to the year 1924 in this very neighborhood, just where they're now doing construction at the symphony. There used to be a theater called the Grand Central. It was a big theater in the 1920s, and a very popular local band leader called Gene Rodemick worked there. Gene Rodemick was a very significant 1920s band leader. His orchestra recorded many records for Brunswick, and he did many compositions. We're going to play his 1924 arrangements of his own composition called Tijuana. He would have played it just this way 100 years ago, pretty much to this day, just a block away. And actually, Brian is playing an original tenor banjo used in that band. So here we go, Tijuana. Thank you very much, folks. That's St. Louis jazz from the year 1924, just as you might have heard it in that parking lot they're working on over there. I'm going to tell you about all sorts of beautiful historic parking lots on this evening. Well, we'll get back to the St. Louis material shortly. For the time being, we're going to jump ahead 10 years now to the year 1934 and play a number called All I Do Is Dream of You. This is a tune that was actually written for Joan Crawford in the movie Sadie McGee. And the particular version we're going to play, you might be able to tell. I know my accent's pretty thick in St. Louis now after living here for so long, but you might be able to just detect a bit of a British accent. And this actual arrangement we're doing is a British arrangement by the British band leader Ray Noble, and the original vocalist from this session that we're going to copy was the great Al Bowley, who was a big deal in the 1930s. Okay, All I Do Is Dream of You. It's the 1930s, so we're playing trumpets now and not cornets. Here we go, folks. Da, da, da. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Through is dream of you, and with the dawn I still go on dreaming of you. You're every word, you're everything, you're every little song that my heart can sing. Autumn, winter, summer and spring, and were there more than 24 hours a day, they'd be spent in sweet content dreaming away. When skies are gray, when skies are blue, morning, noon, and nighttime too. All I do the whole night through is dream of you. Ken Cebrian on the trumpet. Guys, we're skipping everybody's stomp. 104. Can you do that? My book as well. Okay. Well, thank you very much. All I Do Is Dream of You from the year 1934. And you'll notice what a difference 10 years makes in this historic jazz. Very different styles. Jazz music was moving so quickly back then. And if you were to go back to the year 1914 and compare it to the year 1924, it would seem even more different, and even more ragtimey, actually, than what you hear in 1924. Music was changing so quickly. That's why it's so exciting to study, and also why it's so exciting and fun for us to play, because depending on what chart we're doing, we have to switch gears entirely John goes from playing the sousaphone, but by 1930, there's almost no sousaphone, so he's playing the string bass. And because it's 1934, he's still using original gut strings and slapping the strings in that old-fashioned style. Hopefully throughout the night, you'll see all these little differences that we enjoy to do. Ken, did you find my chart for that? Thanks so much. Well, we're going to go back to the St. Louis material now. We're going to go to the year 1926, and we're going to try to emulate for you what a riverboat band may have sounded like. Specifically, we're going to play an arrangement by the great African-American cornetist Dewey Jackson. Now, Dewey Jackson, he was about Louis Armstrong's age. And he was known locally as the inventor of the wah-wah cornets because he played in this great blues style and used all these mutes and sound effects that were popular at the time. Well, he had a terrific band. It was made up of some New Orleans musicians and some St. Louis musicians. This was really common with riverboat bands because they traveled to and from St. Louis to New Orleans. The St. Louis guys prided themselves in their sheet music reading ability, as well as their blues playing. St. Louis was a big blues town. The New Orleans guys prided themselves in their ability to play good ad-libbed hot jazz music. And so we're going to play the 1926 arrangement recorded in St. Louis of a tune called She's Crying for Me. And just try to imagine yourself on a hot day just like this. In fact, this tune was recorded in June of 1926. So a day just like this. There's no air conditioning, so you've all gone down to the riverfront to try and cool down a bit. Here we go. She's Crying for Me. She's Crying for Me in the style of Dewey Jackson's Peacock Orchestra. Now, the thing about these riverboat bands is that a band that was expected to be able to play sort of hot blues music like that were also expected to play light classical music. These were versatile musicians. Now, but in the 1920s, African-American musicians just weren't afforded the opportunities to record classical music. So even though they had the ability to play fine pop classical music, it was these records that the record companies wanted them to produce. And so we're going to do an example of this later, actually. In some of these blues recordings, they covertly put classical music references into the music. And later on, we'll play for you another example of a riverboat band sneaking classical music references into their blues playing. But we'll get back to that. Next up, I would love to play an arrangement from 1924. This is another one from 100 years ago, from right here in St. Louis. This is an example of my favorite St. Louis band from the 1920s. It was a group called Chas Kref and his Jazzomaniacs. Charles Kref, and his, isn't that a great name? Jazzomaniacs. He probably led the most popular of the African-American jazz bands in St. Louis. He kept an office on Market Street, and his band was so popular that on any given night, he would book his band in several locations, and he would simply drive his car from gig to gig and appear for just a couple of songs to collect the paycheck. And I mentioned this last night as well, but that was a story that was relayed to me by Charles Kref III, who was the grandson of the original 1920s Charles Kref. And sadly, he passed away a few years ago, but he was a great local musician, and anyone here that saw him play, perhaps even on the Golden Rod Show boat you might remember him from, will know what an important part he was to our jazz community and to the gospel community as well. So how about a round of applause for Charles Kref III? What a great local musician. And we're going to play an arrangement that when I first met Charles, I invited him to come play with our group, and he played the piano for us on this arrangement of his grandfather's arrangement of a tune called Pleasure Mad. This tune was actually originally written by a young Sidney Bechet. So here we go, Pleasure Mad in the style of Chas Kref and his Jazzomaniacs. you, folks. Pleasure Mad, written by Sidney Bechet in 1924. Later, they changed the title to Viper Mad. But originally, it was called Pleasure Mad, and that was the arrangements by Charles Kreff and his Jazzomaniacs. They would have played that in venues on market streets. They would have played that on the riverboats as well. Yeah, really, I get so fired up by trying to copy Charles Kreff's playing style. And when I moved here as well, discovering that St. Louis had this guy in the 1920s that could play red hot like that, I thought, I've got to live here and I've got to try and sound like that. Just a special mention as well. The clarinet solo that Josh played, he learnt directly from the 78 record, and that was the solo played on the record by a young clarinetist called William Thornton Blue. He's not well remembered today outside of people that study this music, but he was the original clarinetist for Cab Calloway, and it featured on Minnie the Moocher. So, but this was his first record, actually, before he joined Cab Calloway's band. So keep practicing, Josh, and you too could join Cab Calloway's band. Step outside of St. Louis for a tune here and play just a lovely pop song from 1929. This is the Ben Selvin arrangement. He was a good band leader. And the tune is titled, Am I Blue? These tears in my eyes telling you, now was I gay until today, when each plan with my gal had done fell through. Was a time she was my only one, but now I'm the sad and lonely one, honey, lonely one, 'cause am I blue? Yes, you'd be too, but now she's gone and went through, so tell me, baby, am I blue? Bless you, sir. Bless you. Well, is everyone having a good time so far? We're having a terrific time playing for you. This is a group that we all just love to play in. Or at least that's what they tell me before they get paid. No, we love playing in this group. We started, I can't remember, I said 7 years ago last night. Is it 7 years or so? Round about 2017 we started. In fact, most of the people here on stage were there at the very first rehearsal. And we got together with a mission to try and play authentic 1920s jazz, and then later on it morphed into this sort of big St. Louis jazz project. But it's been a fun journey. With the exception of lockdown, roughly since then we've played a public performance once a month, and we continue to play a dance show every single month, every third Sunday of the month at a concert hall in Maplewood. So it's a bit more rowdy than this because we have a big dance floor and the dancers go nuts. But that's the 1920s way. After all, it's the Arcadia Dance Orchestra. People are supposed to be drinking and spitting and throwing things. Not tonight. Anyway, if you do want to learn about how you can follow our progress and see us in the future, do sign up to that mailing list. Okay, back to the St. Louis material. We're going to play a number now that was recorded in 1922. And so far, most of the St. Louis material we played, except for Tijuana, has been more of the bluesy variety. But this is of this more sort of elegant, private country club, like when you think Gatsby Party. This is kind of what the reality of sort of that high society music was like. This is a piece titled Eleanor, and it was recorded by Herbert Berger's St. Louis Club Orchestra. The St. Louis Club is actually a private club which still exists here in St. Louis. People with the better seats might be members actually tonight. And actually, I still play 1920s jazz for the St. Louis Club. They've had old-time jazz their entire history. But back in 1922, the building was located on North Spring and Lindell, which is just around the corner. The building burnt down. I don't think it was anything to do with the band, but so the building doesn't exist anymore. And actually, the Herbert Berger's band literally moved next door to the Coronado Hotel after their residency at the defunct St. Louis Club. Anyway, here is, if you were to travel back 102 years and walk up the street, you might hear Herbert Berger's band playing this tune, Eleanor. Hany of the Tennessee. Thank you very much, folks. That was a tune titled Eleanor from 1922, and that was the arrangement which was recorded by Herbert Berger's St. Louis Club Orchestra. So you can just imagine people dressed up kind of like us, balancing illegal cocktails and a cigarette whilst trying to one step around the room. If you want to learn how to dance to 1920s music, actually, at our monthly events, a local dancer, I think she's here tonight, Jane is here. She's a fantastic dancer, and she offers a free foxtrot lesson. So if you don't know how to dance to the music by the first set, by the second set, you can be dancing around the room. So come learn how to foxtrot, and we'll play Eleanor for you again. You can bring your own booze, just like it's a 90s. We'll provide ice and limes, and you can do the rest, okay? Okay, then. Well, let's see. Let's jump forwards now to 1936. We're just going to have fun with a bit of a pop tune. This is our own arrangement of this number. I'm sure you know it. It was introduced by Bing Crosby and is titled Pennies from Heaven.
It rains pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven? You'll find your fortune falling all over town. So just be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Won't you trade it for a package of sunshine and flowers? If you want those things you love, there must be showers. So when you hear it thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me.
Thank you very much, folks. Pennies from Heaven. Hey, how about I introduce this fine band we have this evening? On the tenor saxophone and clarinet, the great Jeff Hany, folks. Leading our reed section on the first alto, and he's going to play the baritone sax, the clarinet, as well tonight. We have Josh Baumgartner, folks. On the alto saxophone and the clarinet. I think there's a tiny soprano saxophone down there, unless the baritone gave birth or something. Let's see. Where is it? It's down there. We have Lindsey Davis, folks. On the trombone and doing some singing for you tonight as well, Mikial, Andrea. Playing all the tricky trumpet parts so I don't have to, Ken Cebrian. Playing this original 1920s drum set, Kevin O'Connor. If at the end of the show you want to come up to the edge of the stage and take a look at some of the great gear that Kevin has back there, I'm sure he'll be happy to show you some. But real quick, before we move on, he played one obscure instrument, but I'm sure it's so 1920s, I bet it's never been played in this venue before. It's called a boca de boc. It's a little handheld 1920s. And so if you were wondering what the heck that sound was a few tunes ago, it was probably Kevin messing around with his boca de boc again. Yeah. On the string bass and playing the third largest sousaphone in the world and the 8th largest tuba, figure that out, we have the great John Weiss, folks. Playing the tenor banjo, the plectrum banjo, and the 6-string guitar, all different tunings, folks, Brian Cool. And our fantastic pianist, the one and only Mary Ann Schulte. Back in 1924 in St. Louis, there was a novelty group called the Mound City Blue Blowers. They were led by a chap called Red Mackenzie, and the band was made up of bellhops who worked at the Hotel Claridge. When they got off work, they would go to a soda fountain across the street, and they would practice their kazoos, their hot combs, and their banjos. And one day, they were picked up by Gene Rodemick's group, who I mentioned at the very start of the show. Well, Gene Rodemick and his band just loved this novelty act, and they even took him up to Chicago to record. And in 1924, they recorded a novelty number, actually called the Arkansas Blues, and it went on to sell hundreds of thousands of records. These bellhops from St. Louis, with their novelty instruments, were outselling the greatest jazz musicians in America. And they went on to be jazz legends. These guys played with Fats Waller. They played with Coleman Hawkins. They were playing with the best New York jazz musicians with their novelty instruments. Well, a big fan of theirs locally was a young man who originally came from Carbondale, Illinois, a saxophone player called Frankie Trumbauer. Now, Frankie Trumbauer, as a teenager, moved to St. Louis and learned to play the C melody saxophone. He quickly became a very big deal locally, and in fact would go on to be one of the most influential saxophone players of all time. Guys like Lester Young, Coleman Hawkins, many people cited Frankie Trumbauer as their inspiration. Well, he recorded with the Mound City Blue Blowers in the mid-1920s and recorded a tune titled San, S-A-N. It had been written in the year 1920 and was part of that craze of fake sort of Egyptian music, that whole Lawrence of Arabia craze. Lots of tunes came out written by guys who'd never been further south than New Jersey, writing tunes about Egypt, you know. Anyway, Frankie Trumbauer laid down an outstanding saxophone solo, and it caused ripples across the whole jazz world. And locally in St. Louis, it became the benchmark for hot saxophone playing. Local saxophone players had to know this solo. Lindsey hates it when I tell this story because it inevitably means that I'm about to make her read this really difficult solo. So we're going to play for you, San, and we're going to and Lindsey's going to play for you that wacky Frankie Trumbauer solo. This is some real St. Louis stuff, guys. One, two, four. Thank you very much, folks. Lindsey Davis, what a solo. Lindsey, I think you passed the 1920s Frank Trumbauer test. Yeah. She gets a special badge she can sew on her tuxedo. Well, folks, people often ask us how this music actually comes together, because obviously we can't just say go and play a whole arrangement and make it sound like it's from 1922. For those of you who are interested, I'll tell you. For those of you who aren't interested, go grab a drink. This won't take long. But no, there are lots of ways in which we can recreate the music of the 1920s. One such way, and this is a very convenient way when it works out, is you can actually still find the original written arrangements that some of these bands used. Back in the 1920s, this music was so popular that if you went to a music store and you were wanting to start your own band just like this, you could go to the sheet music store and say, I would like the arrangement for San for 11 instruments. And they would say, sure, here it is, and you'd pay for it. Now, luckily, sheet music collectors have collected these, and you can still get hold of these arrangements. So that's one way we do it, is by searching out the original sheet music. And that version of San is from one of those published stock arrangements. All we did is we took that, and then we edited it a bit. We put some different solos in, we mixed some things around, and we put that Frank Trumbauer solo in, just to bully Lindsey. Another, well, really the main other way that we recreate the St. Louis music is that we find the original recordings. I have a pretty good collection of 78 records, and I'm pretty proud of my St. Louis 78 collection. If there's any 78 collectors in the room, keep away from it, it's mine. But we literally listen to the record, we play dut, then we press pause. And then I write down the trumpet parts. Then I play it again, dut. Then I write down the first alto parts. Then I do it again. And it takes up literally all of my life. In fact, I never wrote more charts, more arrangements this way than I did during the first 2 weeks of the lockdown. I did like 5, we call these transcriptions. And so lots of the music you're hearing tonight, we've copied religiously, note for note, from these old records. But then the challenge is playing it in a way that doesn't feel stuffy. We don't want it to be a museum piece. This music is fun. It's supposed to be lively. And so the only way we can do that is by playing it live as much as possible until we're barely using the sheet music. Really, we want it to be up, we want it to be up here, and we want it to be in here, and we just want to play and have fun. And so we get together once a month, we play a little concert, and we try and live and breathe this old St. Louis music, so that when we do a concert like this, we don't stink too bad, you know. Well, let's move on now. We're going to play arrangements from a great band which was led by a chap called Don Redman. He was a very important songwriter in the 1920s. He was very important in the New York scene in the early 1920s. He was a reed player in Fletcher Henderson's great band. Now, Fletcher Henderson isn't as well remembered as Duke Ellington, but he was one of the most important black band leaders of the Harlem Renaissance. Don Redman was his arranger, but Don Redman went on to lead his own great band in Detroit. And we're going to play one of his Detroit numbers now from 1929, a tune titled Miss Hannah. And I'll do my best Don Redman vocal impression. We'll see. Okay, Miss Hannah. With trumpets in this camera. One, two, three, four.
clothes, and she's fortunate with bows. Everybody knows it's Miss Hannah I'm speaking of. Does she have a smile? And boy, what a style. Men would walk a mile for Hannah. Now, is she lovely? Boy, how I mean all the other girls in town go unseen. Does she have a frown? Why no, she's the talk of all the town. Men will gather round for Hannah.
Well, thank you very much, folks. That was Miss Hannah in the style of Don Redman's fantastic band from up in Detroit in the year 1929. Back to the St. Louis material now, and back to that riverfront. Well, I promised a tune that would have a classical music reference, and I'll tell you what, I'll give a free lapel pin to anyone that can tell me what the classical music reference is at the end of a tune, okay? These are very valuable things. Well, we're going to play for you one of only two arrangements that were ever recorded by probably the most important musician in riverboat jazz history. Now, lots of musicians worked for the riverboat companies here in St. Louis, in New Orleans, Minneapolis, up and down the river. But most of these guys just did it for a little while, and then they moved on. But there was this one musician that really spent his entire career working on the riverboats for the Streckfus Company. He was born in Paducah, Kentucky. He was a pianist. He also played the steam calliope, and he was called Fate Marable. Now, Fate Marable moved to St. Louis, worked for the Streckfus Company, and he died here actually in 1947. He spent about 30 years working for this company, and so many great jazz musicians got their start in his band. It was Louis Armstrong's first ever gig outside of New Orleans, right here on the riverboats in St. Louis. He got the job with Fate Marable. He couldn't read sheet music at the time, and he learned to read sheet music whilst in this band. He described it as a floating conservatory. Fate Marable was a big deal, actually. But he only recorded two sides in 1924, and one of those sides was titled Frankie and Johnny. Now, Frankie and Johnny is about as St. Louis as it gets. It's a murder ballad, which means it's a song written about a famous murder that happened in St. Louis in the 1890s. It happened downtown. Now, it's important that Fate Marable recorded this. Half his band are from New Orleans, and half of them are from St. Louis. And you can bet the St. Louis guys knew all about this tune. They probably remember their parents singing it back in 1908 or something, you know. So this is a great example of real St. Louis riverboat jazz. And right at the very start, the tune opens up with a classical music reference, free lapel pin for the buff out, for the nerd out there who figures it out. The rest of you, these are $5, by the way. Let me do a little plug. I'll be collecting sales. Okay, Frankie and Johnny, folks. the vulgar boatman. No, sir. You owe me a lapel pin now. It was the prelude to Act 3 of Wagner's Lohengrin. Although if there are any musicians from the symphony listening, they might disagree. Well, folks, we're going to stay in the year 1924, and we're going to stay in St. Louis. But rather than heading down to the riverfront, we're literally going to turn to our left and go 2 blocks, I think 2 blocks in that direction, to Olive, right there on the corner of Olive and Grand. There used to be a beautiful, ornate venue called the Arcadia Ballroom. And it's, in fact, where we take our name, the Arcadia Dance Orchestra. It was one of the most lavish and beautiful venues in Missouri in the 1920s. It had been built in the ragtime era and was originally called Dreamland. But when it was partnered with a venue up in Detroit by the same name, it changed its name to the Arcadia in 1915. In 1924, it was renovated. The ceiling was covered in beautiful Art Deco murals, and new red-hot, up-to-date 1920s jazz music was brought into the venue. The band that was hired to play there was called the Arcadia Peacock Orchestra of St. Louis, directed by violinist Jack Ford, and they cut several records in 1924 and 1925 for the OK record label, which had set up roughly in this neighborhood in St. Louis to record local bands to distribute that regional music all around the country. So right now we're going to play for you their first record, their first tune, a tune titled R.R. Archie. And this is exactly what you might have heard if you were to travel 2 blocks and 100 years backwards and visit the beautiful Arcadia Ballroom. Here we go. R.R. Archie, folks. Dum, dum, da, da. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. How about those saxophones? of my favorite sounds is harmonized saxophones accompanied by banjo. I love that. Well, there you go, folks. That's how the Arcadia Peacock Orchestra. Well, I can't say we sound as good as they did, but we try our best, and that's how they may have sounded performing for the 1,600 dancers that the Arcadia could accommodate. Isn't that amazing? 1,600 dancers. Well, we're going to start to wrap things up here. We've got just a few more tunes left. It's been an absolute pleasure playing for you, and I want to say a big thank you to Jazz St. Louis for inviting us to come play. What a privilege. Thank you. If you have enjoyed the music, be sure to let them know. Tell them to bring us back. Tell them, bring back that handsome British guy. Actually, don't say that. They won't know who you're talking about. Okay, we're going to jump forwards to 1936. This is one of the last examples, until really you start to get into a later style of jazz, of what St. Louis bands were sounding like in early jazz history. But I just love this particular piece. It's titled Echo in the Dark, and it was composed by a St. Louis musician called Chick Finney, and he wrote it for the group The Original St. Louis Crackerjacks. This is a tremendous example of early St. Louis swing music, and this particular piece is very mellow, very relaxed, and you can definitely hear how much things have changed in the 12 years from 1924. So here we go, Echo in the Dark. One, two, three, four. We're just doing C1 somebody. Well, thank you very much, folks. 1936, a great St. Louis composition titled "Echo in the Dark." That's a really neat composition, and the whole This band was recording for Decca Records. They had to go up to Chicago at this point. After the Depression, they weren't doing regional recording sessions anymore. You had to travel further afield to get recorded. So if you want any of these tunes, I recommend look up the original music. It's part of your great St. Louis music history. And the music in its original form is so enjoyable. And I highly recommend that recording in particular. Very, very great St. Louis jazz. Well, we're going to go back a few years to 1932. Now, this is a little funny. Before the band was called the original St. Louis Crackerjacks, before it was called the original St. Louis Crackerjacks, it was called Eddie Johnson's St. Louis Crackerjacks. Well, I guess the band weren't too keen on Eddie Johnson, and they fired him, and they retitled the band the original St. Louis Crackerjacks. So poor old Eddie Johnson. Well, we're going to honor him now. We're going to try to honor him now, and we'll play a tune titled Good Old Bosom Bread. And this was a piece recorded by Eddie Johnson's version of the band in 1932. This, again, is well and truly in the swing era now. So no more one-stepping and two-stepping with illegal cocktails. Now you can drink legally and you can Lindy Hop. So maybe Lindy Hop's a little later. I don't know. But anyway, here's a tune called Good Old Bosom Bread. One, two, 1, 2, 3.
They don't believe she's got good old bosom bread. Yes, I know. She's got. Yes, I know. She's got. Yes, I know. She's got. Oh, yes, I know. She's got. Yes, I know. She's got good old bosom bread.
How about Mikial and Andrea there on that vocal? My singing's too old-fashioned for 1932, so I have to bring in Mikial to There we go. Well, as I said, we are starting to wrap things up, and we've just got time for 2 more tunes, I think. Are we doing okay? I haven't consulted the time, actually, but I'm just assuming by all the tired faces in the audience that... Okay, this is a piece that I really like to play. It was actually originally composed in 1923 by Harry Warren, Grant Clark, and Edgar Leslie. And it's a tune titled Home in Pasadena. It was a dance band piece, just a pop song, really. But as I mentioned, I grew up in the UK, and I was sort of born and raised on traditional jazz music. We had a family band when I was a kid, and my dad taught me to play a bit of trumpets, and we played tunes like 5'2" and When the Saints Go Marching In. We played for church picnics and stuff like that. And I was raised on, before I discovered old records, really old records, I was raised on sort of revival records from the 1960s of sort of Dixieland bands playing this type of music. And one of the big bands in the 1960s who were still playing old-time jazz in the UK were a group called the Temperance Seven. Now, they're not really well remembered, but they were great. And they weren't just your sort of commercial Dixieland band. They really were into the old music. They dressed in sort of velvet tuxedos and smoked cigars and sat in armchairs. They were real eccentrics. Very much in that Monty Python group. Very much in that crowd, actually. But they did a great version of this recording, of this tune titled Pasadena. And we're going to play their version. But the fun bit of pop trivia about this band is that before he was producing the Beatles records, George Martin was their producer, and he actually got them a #1 hit record in the pop charts, playing 1920s jazz music of the 1960s in England. So I'm very fond of this tune for that connection. It reminds me of the music I listened to as a kid, and we're going to play their 1960s, which is space age for us, arrangement of Pasadena. One, two, 3, 4. Railway station, oh, you Pullman train, here's my reservation for my destination, and it's far beyond the western plains to find my home in Pasadena, my home where grass is greener, where hummingbees sing melodies and orange trees scent the breeze. Lord, I'd like to be a home sweet homer, and there I'll settle down beneath the palms in someone's arms in Pasadena, Pasadena town. No more. Okay, folks, we're going to leave you with one last tune. It's been our absolute pleasure playing for you. I will be hanging out at the door at the end trying to sell these cheap lapel pins. I tell people they used to be bigger and cheaper, and now they're smaller and more expensive. But they're classier, you know. And please do sign up to that mailing list. We would love to see you all at a concert in the future. We play all the time. I not only lead this group, but I lead smaller jazz combos, all playing early forms of jazz. I also host a weekly radio show that I spin old 78 records on for Classic 107.3 every Sunday at 1 p.m. So tune in and listen to me prattle on there as well. Before we play this last number, how about one last round of applause for this fantastic, dedicated band? I almost described them as committed, but perhaps they should be. We're going to play for you a number from the year 1930. It was written for and introduced by the great Paul Whiteman, who led probably the biggest, most popular band of the 1920s. It was premiered in this great colorized movie, it's been recently colorized, called The King of Jazz. The original tune, despite the way we're dressed, it has nothing to do with penguins. It's titled Happy Feet. Check out that solo order, please. Here we go, folks. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got those 10 little tapping toes, and when they hear a beat they can't control. But dancing up to save my soul, the weary blues can't get in my shoes, cause my shoes refuse to ever get weary. Now I get cheerful with an earful of music sweet, cause I've got those happy feet. very much, ladies and gentlemen. Take care of yourselves. Can we do one more? I'm going to do something incredibly unfair. Actually, I want to do a big shout out to Jeff. We had somebody who had to drop out today. Jeff showed up at 5 p.m., checked out the set list, and has been sight reading all this stuff all night. What a pro. I'm going to throw something at him that he didn't even have 15 minutes earlier to prepare for. But we're going to do his happy little number from 1929. It has a positive message. We need a positive message right now. And it's called Keep Your Sunny Side Up. Okay, folks. Everyone got it? Here we go. Yep, yep, yep. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sunny side up, keep it up, and hide the side that gets blue. If you have 9 sons in a row, start a baseball team, will they make money, you know? And keep your funny side up, and please don't give up. Let your laughter shine through, yes, diddly-do. Get up on your legs, be like 2 fried eggs. Keep your sunny side up.